Now he's the one explaining himself to the board. You ever get dressed up for a meeting thinking this is your moment, only to walk into a firing squad? That was me, 3 months ago, sitting stiff in a glass-walled conference room surrounded by 12 coworkers and a manager who didn't even have the decency to lower his voice. Eli Carter consistently ranks in the bottom tier of our sales team, my manager, Rick Maddox, declared, waving my performance review like it was a biohazard. His numbers speak for themselves. I saw my teammate Maya glance down, fiddling nervously with a pen. Drew avoided my eyes, pretending to be deeply fascinated by a blank Excel sheet. No one looked at me. No one said a word. I just sat there, 28 years old, feeling like I was collapsing inward. Like I was disappearing. My name's Eli Carter, and for 3 long years, I believed I was a failure. That I just didn't have it, whatever it was. But let me tell you something before we go further. This story doesn't end how Rick thought it would. So stick around. That conference room ambush happened on a Tuesday in March. I remember the exact day because I went home that night and collapsed on the floor of my studio apartment, sobbing into the carpet, phone clutched in one hand as I called my mom. I don't think I'm cut out for this, I whispered through tears. Maybe I really am, below average. She tried to soothe me, but what could she say? Rick's favorite line echoed in my brain, the numbers don't lie, except they do. Especially when someone else is stealing them, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind, because this betrayal didn't begin that Tuesday in March. It started 3 years earlier, one stolen commission at a time. Fresh out of college, I was hungry, ambitious in a way only 20-somethings with no money and big dreams can be. Pinnacle Solutions hired me as a junior sales rep, my first real job. I dove in headfirst, 60-hour weeks, learning every product spec like scripture, hammering the phones until my voice gave out. I believed, foolishly, that hard work always wins. Rick Maddox was my manager from day one. Tall, polished, and confident in that smug, self-important kind of way. He spoke like he was doing you a favor by breathing in your direction. Back then, I admired him. When he pulled me aside for coaching sessions, I scribbled notes like they were gospel. When he criticized my client calls, I thanked him. When he asked to help with the promising accounts I'd developed, I felt lucky he took notice. You show promise, Eli, he'd say with a half smile. But you need to trust the process. Let me help you close these bigger deals. You're not quite ready to handle complex accounts yet. I was so eager to impress, I handed over my best leads without question. There was the pharmaceutical company I'd nurtured for 4 months. Rick stepped in right before the final pitch. Team effort, he said. Then there was the manufacturing giant that approached me after a trade show. We'll close this one together, Rick promised. But I'll have to be the point person. You understand. Every time, the commission breakdown got murkier. This one goes under my name due to the client's size. You'll still get credit internally. The company signed with Pinnacle, not with you specifically. And I believed him. God help me, I actually believed him. Why? First annual review was soul-crushing. But not surprising. I sat across from Rick, blinking at the ranking list, my name dead last. I'm disappointed, Eli, he said, his tone all business. Your closing rate is well below expectations. Frankly, it's unacceptable for someone who's been here a full year. I tried to protest, but I brought in Meridian and Coastal Industries. Rick held up a hand. Working an account and closing one are 2 different things. Anyone can send emails. The real skill is in sealing the deal. I left that meeting shattered. Maybe I was delusional. Maybe I'd overestimated what I brought to the table, but I didn't quit. I pushed harder. I became obsessive, researching clients so thoroughly, I could name their kids and dog breeds. I hit 200 dials a week. I attended networking events on weekends. And still, the same pattern, I'd get a lead 90% there, and Rick would swoop in at the last moment. It's a high-stakes deal, Eli. Let me handle the close. Performance review season came again, and this time Rick held our rankings meeting in front of the whole team. We went down the list, Maya's revenue, Drew's close rate, Natasha's retention stats. And Eli, pause for dramatic effect. Eli is still finding his footing. He smiled like he was announcing the weather. Effort isn't enough in this business. I wanted to melt into my chair. From that moment, everything changed. Teammates started treating me like I was made of glass. Not mean, just careful. Like I might break if they talked about bonuses or new clients near me. I stopped dating. Stopped going out. How do you explain to someone that you're failing at life? I was living in a dingy studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling, eating $1 ramen packets every night. My wardrobe, 3 worn dress shirts in rotation. I was broke, tired, and running on fumes. But quitting felt like confirming Rick's diagnosis. Below average. Something changed in Rick. He got cockier, sloppier. I noticed weird inconsistencies. A client I'd spent weeks courting was suddenly marked under his portfolio. Deals I initiated somehow had no record of me in the CRM. Technical error, he'd say, and then one day, Maya, a quiet, dependable Maya, approached me. Eli. I saw something, she whispered, checking over her shoulder. She'd been helping update Salesforce data and came across multiple entries where Rick had reassigned lead ownership. After the deals had closed at Tio himself, I was stunned. Are you sure? She nodded, handing me a flash drive. Backed up everything. Just in case. That night, I stayed up until 4 a.m. digging through the files. There it was, dozens of accounts I had worked on, funneled into Rick's pipeline post-close. Commission logs, CRM edits, even email threads where he'd subtly erased my involvement. That he was stealing from me. 3 years of below average wasn't a lack of talent. It was fraud. I could have quit quietly. Walked away with my dignity. What was left of it? But I'd had enough. So I built a case. Quietly. Carefully, with Maya's help, I documented everything, timestamps, file histories, Slack messages, deal memos. I even recorded a few of our coaching sessions where Rick promised to split commissions. Then I requested a meeting with HR and legal. 2 weeks later, I was called into a boardroom. But this time, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't the one. On trial, Rick sat at the head of the table, eyes flicking nervously from document to document. The HR director read out the findings like a judge in court: inappropriate reassignment of sales leads, fabricated data in CRM, manipulated commission structures. Rick tried to defend himself, claimed it was a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was terminated on the spot, effective immediately. And then, Eli, the VP of sales, said, turning to me, "We owe you an apology and a promotion." It's been 3 months since Rick was fired. I'm now leading the West Region sales team. We crushed our quarterly targets. I got my first real bonus check, more than I'd made in an entire year before. I moved into a new apartment, bought a real mattress, rebuilt my savings, but more than that, I got my self-worth back, because the truth is, I was never below average. I was sabotaged by someone who feared what I could become if given the chance. So to anyone out there feeling invisible, passed over, dismissed, look closer. The problem might not be you, and if it is, fix it. Fight back. Prove them wrong, like I did. You'd think vindication would come with confetti or a marching band or maybe a slow clap from everyone who ever doubted you, but real redemption, it's quieter, more internal, more solid. The day Rick was fired, I walked out of that boardroom and sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour. Not crying, not celebrating, just breathing. Deep, chest-expanding breaths like I hadn't taken in 3 years. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity, like I finally saw myself clearly again. The company offered me a promotion that same week, senior account manager with a full portfolio and a small team of new reps to mentor. Honestly, part of me hesitated. After everything that had happened, how could I trust any of it? What if it was all performative? A way to clean up the mess and move on. But Maya sat me down and said, "Eli, this is your shot. Take it and make it yours. Don't let Rick haunt the rest of your career." She was right. So I stepped into the role. The first few weeks were strange. People treated me differently now. Not with pity, not with awkward politeness, but with respect. Like they were finally seeing what I was capable of. And I didn't let it go to my head. I let it fuel me. I met with every client I'd ever helped close, formally, this time. I rebuilt trust. I nurtured accounts like they were seedlings and started seeing the growth firsthand. Not just numbers. In a spreadsheet, real relationships. And the team I was now leading? They reminded me of myself 3 years ago, green, eager, afraid of messing up. I made a promise to them: no gatekeeping, no undercutting, no politics. We rise together. Or, not at all. I wish I could tell you that Rick's exit made everything better. But ghosts have a way of lingering. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he'd stolen from. After word got out, more reps came forward, quietly, cautiously. Commissions they'd never received. Leads that mysteriously disappeared. Even Sarah, who'd once avoided eye contact with me in meetings, admitted that Rick had rewritten her call logs more than once. The company launched a full internal audit. By the end of it, 4 other junior reps had their comp plans retroactively corrected. HR didn't broadcast it. Too much liability, I'm sure, but the people who mattered knew, and slowly, the culture shifted. IT became okay to ask questions, to request transparency, to speak up, and that's a legacy I'm proud of. One Friday evening, a few weeks into my new role, I visited my parents for dinner. I hadn't told them everything, just that things had improved at work. But when my mom handed me a plate of food and looked into my eyes, she paused. "You seem different," she said. "Lighter." I smiled. Yeah, I think I am. Over dessert, I finally told them the full story, how Rick had manipulated the system, how I'd thought I was the failure, how Maya had helped me uncover the truth, how I'd almost walked away from the one thing I was good at. My dad, stoic, old school, rarely emotional, nodded once and said, "Takes guts to stay standing when someone keeps kicking your legs out from under you. I'm proud of you, son." And just like that, something in me healed. A month later, I stood in the same conference room where Rick had once humiliated me, now running my first quarterly team review. 12 chairs filled. 12 team members watching me. I clicked through the presentation, highlighting wins, coaching areas, opportunities for growth, and when I got to the end, I paused and looked around. "I want to say something," I told them. "There's no such thing as below average here. There's just potential, and the people willing to help you reach it. If you're on this team, it means I believe in what you bring to the table, and I will never take that for granted." The room was quiet, not awkward this time, but attentive, real, and then I saw Drew crack a grin. Maya gave a thumbs up. One of the newer reps, Isaiah, actually clapped. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it felt better. If you've made it this far, maybe you're like me, maybe you've spent months, or years, convincing yourself that you're just not enough. That if only you worked harder, or talked louder, or looked more like them, you'd finally break through. Here's what I'll say: sometimes the system isn't broken, it's rigged. And when it is, it's not your job to become better at surviving inside it. It's your job to expose it, to outlast it, to rebuild it. Don't give up on yourself just because someone else is threatened by your potential. I almost did, but I'm damn glad I didn't. Last week, I got an anonymous message in my LinkedIn inbox. No profile picture, no name. It read, "You deserved better." We both did. He did it to me too, years ago. I didn't fight back, but I'm glad you did. Maybe it was a former rep, maybe someone Rick had burned before Pinnacle. Either way, I just replied with 2 words: never again. Let them call you average. Let them rank you last. As long as you know the truth, you're already one step ahead. And when your moment comes, don't just rise, lead. 6 months into my promotion, I stopped waking up with that old pit in my stomach. You know, the one where dread hits before your eyes even adjust to the morning light, where you lie there wondering if today's the day someone finds you out, confirms the suspicion that you're just not enough. That voice had gone quiet, not because I suddenly thought I was amazing, but because I finally understood that I never deserved what happened. That surviving it wasn't proof of weakness, it was proof of resilience. But success brings new kinds of questions, and soon, mine was this: what now? Pinnacle had changed. A little. Enough to breathe, but beneath the surface, the structure still leaned old school. Quotas mattered more than people. Burnout was a badge of honor. And the real decision makers still sat on the 19th floor with corner offices and quarterly bonuses that could pay off your student loans twice over. I started thinking, if I can build a team culture that runs on trust and transparency within this system, what could I build outside of it? The idea took root during a coffee meeting with Maya. We were sitting in a quiet corner of our favorite cafe. She had her laptop open, prepping for a client pitch, and I was sketching a new lead generation flow on a napkin. Classic. You ever think about doing this differently? I asked, almost casually. She raised an eyebrow. You mean outside Pinnacle? I nodded. Not out of bitterness. Just clarity. What if we built something that actually walked the talk? She didn't answer right away. Just leaned back, sipped her drink, and smiled. You know, she said, I've been waiting for you to say that. We called it Clarity Sales Group, not revolutionary, not flashy, just honest. We spent nights and weekends sketching the bones of it, how it would operate, how reps would be compensated, how client relationships would be measured by satisfaction, not just dollar signs. We focused on industries we believed in: clean tech, social enterprise, minority-owned brands. We weren't building a company for everyone. We were building one for people like us, who'd been overlooked, underestimated, and underpaid. And when we were ready, we both handed in our resignations. No drama, no bridge burning, just 2 clear voices saying, thank you. We're choosing different. The first 6 months of Clarity were equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. We worked out of Maya's apartment, her dog curled at our feet, takeout boxes stacked like trophies. We didn't sleep much, but every hour felt earned. Our first clients came from people who remembered how we treated them at Pinnacle, folks who were tired of flashy promises and just wanted someone to actually listen. We didn't promise to be the biggest firm. We promised to be the most ethical, and people responded to that. By month 8, we hired our first junior rep, a woman named Nia, fresh out of college, nervous but bright-eyed. Before her first client call, she pulled me aside and asked, what happens if I mess this up? I looked her straight in the eyes and said, then we'll learn together. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to grow. She smiled like I'd handed her a life raft, and in that moment, I realized. This was the table I'd been searching for all along. The past, though, doesn't disappear. It just waits. 3 months later, I got an email. My stomach tightened like an old reflex. But I opened it. Turns out Rick had applied for a role at one of our client companies, one I'd personally helped on board. The hiring manager had seen our connection on LinkedIn and wanted my input. They didn't ask for gossip. Just, would you recommend him professionally? I stared at that question for a long time, and then, I typed to Rick is a talented communicator and knows how to close. But I cannot in good conscience recommend him for a role that requires integrity, collaboration, or ethical decision-making. That's not a personal attack, it's a professional observation based on direct experience. I hit send to no revenge. No pettiness, just truth, and it felt like closing a door I didn't need anymore. A year after Clarity launched, we hosted a community career workshop. Free resume help, interview prep, confidence coaching. I stood near the back of the room, watching young professionals, some terrified, some excited, get advice from our team. One kid, maybe 20, asked me what I did for a living. I told him, I help people get seen. And I meant it. That night, driving home, I thought about the conference room where Rick once called me below average. I thought about all the hours I spent trying to prove I belonged. And I realized I didn't have to prove it anymore. I was living it. If you're still reading, maybe you're where I was, in the quiet part of the story, where it hurts and nothing feels fair and you want to disappear just so no one else sees how lost you feel. Don't stay even when it's painful. Even when the voice in your head whispers that you're not enough, because one day, your story might be someone else's survival guide, and when that day comes, you won't need revenge. You'll have clarity, and that's more powerful than anything they ever took from you.